What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now recently I managed to finish the story mode, the campaign of Dying Light 2, as well as take part in most of the side activities, so I definitely feel that I've gotten to see the majority of the game, and that allowed me to sort of create my final opinion, my final thoughts on the game. And that is of course the idea for today's video, to talk about some of the things that I liked, some of the things that I don't like, and just in general what I think about the game and whether I think it's worth the full price. So if you do enjoy the video or find it useful in any way, please do consider giving it a like, subbing to the channel, maybe even sharing the video with a buddy. It really does help the brand grow, and it just means a whole lot to me. Without any further ado, let's go. So starting off with the positives and the things that I liked in Dying Light 2, firstly, it's always interesting for me to look at the different kinds of approaches that players have to this kind of game. So an open world RPG or open world action game like this, for instance, usually you get a camp of people that farm out every single piece of side content and try to basically do as much as they can and have no problem with doing the same thing over and over, essentially trying to garner as many materials and XP and everything like that. And then you get other people that generally play the game and cherry pick the sort of side activities that they want to do, but essentially cut a beeline through the main story of the game, and therefore kind of like don't experience the full world in a way. Now, I definitely put myself somewhere in the middle of those two camps. So Dying Light 2 has a lot to offer in that regard, with a lot of busy work that can be done, a lot of leveling up that needs to be done within your actual skills and gear and all of that, as well as your attributes. So leveling up your health as well as your stamina. And there's a lot of that to do. This is a game that can keep you busy for many hours. And of course, this was highlighted by the developer in the run-up to the game's release, where they said that you can probably look at spending about 500 hours to cover literally everything in the game. Now, 500 hours is a hell of a lot. I haven't spent nearly that much. I have about 60 hours on the game right now, and I don't think I'm going to be spending any much more than that. But things that I liked during my journey, during the 60 hours, the first one being that I think when the game is on rails and when it's telling a tight story is really when it's its best. And that's not a good thing for an open world game like Dying Light 2, but that is definitely a compliment that I can give the game. The opening of the game, this cold open where you're outside the city and you kind of like have to sort of mantle and go into the wilderness and basically make your way towards the city, is phenomenal. And there are pieces of story like that as well in the game once you're in the city, when you kind of like very single-minded in a task that you have to do. And so I feel like the game, when it has that in it, it's really when it is its best for me. So that makes me wonder whether this game was really suited to be this open world game, or whether it would have benefited more from being like a more tightly focused story with certain pieces of the game being open world and then essentially refocusing you again. But I definitely think that's a discussion for another time. Just one of the things that I really liked is when the game is focused and putting you into these sort of story scenarios, it is amazing. It is probably the highlights of the game for me. The second thing that I really liked is the design of the zombies, the volatiles, all of that. That was always good in Dying Light 1 to begin with. I really like the effort that they make into making them all look different and have different ways of attacking you. That's present in this game as well, and they're amazing to look at. The design of the creatures themselves, as well as the way in which you're introduced to them, is fantastic. And I like the horror aspect of it, and it just really works for me. So I like that some of them engage you at range and some try to run away from you, and some are like big hulking brutes that try to like chase you down. But just in general, there's a lot here. There's quite a few of these types of volatiles, and I'm not even just talking about like the normal zombies. I mean like these high powered ones, the dangerous ones that come out at night and at certain story points in the game. The design of that is phenomenal, and I give them all the praise for that. That's pretty cool. And then the last thing that I want to mention out of the list of things that I liked is an odd one. But I have this like love and hate, or maybe it's a hate relationship with games that make you play memories, make you play dreams and that sort of thing. And generally speaking, games really, or developers of games really struggle, in my opinion, to do those in an engaging way where it isn't tiresome after the third or the fourth time that you have to do it. And something which I was highly appreciative of in Dying Light 2 is the moments when we do see flashbacks of the protagonist and his sister, which is the main thing that kind of drives this game, that you essentially you don't have to, with one or two sort of, I would say, separate situations where you had to just run like a small little area or something like that, you don't actually play those flashbacks. And I am super thankful for that. While I was watching like the third or the fourth flashback, I was just like, you know, as shitty as these flashbacks are, you know what would be really fucking ass is actually having to play them. So that, I know that's a weird pro to give the game, but I mean, it is what it is, and it is actually, for me, one of the things that I was appreciative of. Now, of course, we can't just have good things. We have to talk about the things that I didn't like. So for me, the main problem is, and I'll use an example to articulate this. I'm not going to sit and tear the game down. That is not the objective of this video in the first place. But specifically, something that irked me a lot was the systems, some of the systems that were built into the game that were kind of like not very intuitive, or were either just, you know, it seems like it's something that you're just stuck in for the sake of sticking it in to keep you busy and essentially just eat up more of your time. And a very good example for me of that is essentially the system of climbing up to the highest point and pulling out the binoculars and then, you know, kind of like turning 360 like a lighthouse, and you know, finding stuff and mapping it and putting it in. You know, the second or the third time that I you know, found myself reminding that as soon as I was up in a high place, yeah, take the fucking binoculars out, start looking around, and oh, okay, cool, I found 3 new places, you know, inch the binocular around until it closes in and zooms in and gives you the waypoint. I started getting irritated by this. I think it's probably an extremely lazy way of having you find these places that you have to go to. And it reminds me a lot of like old Ubisoft games, which essentially kind of worked on the same system, and I gave them shit back then for them. So this seems like a relic of an age gone past, a really old-fashioned, lazy fucking way for us to discover places. At the same time, and this is where I will freely admit, right now I can't off the top of my head think of a better way for them to do this, but it just seemed like something that was essentially taking you out of the game, because I would just always be like, okay, remember the next time you climb up some fucking high place, you know, just look around, because otherwise you're just gonna have to go climb up again there later. Now, the reason why I keep saying climb up a high place is you can actually just stand on a normal height roof and do this, but the game kind of like forces you in certain cases to do this from the highest possible vantage point, because you are able to then somehow just get like additional distance on this sort of mechanic where you have to just, you know, sort of weasel the fucking binoculars until you get it rightly grabbed there. And this is basically, I mean, it's part of a larger problem for this game, and that is this game tries to do like a lot and tries to take as much of your time to do that. Another good example would be the fact that you have all these things like, you know, DIY grenades and, you know, knives and mines and all of that. And these have multiple upgrade levels in them. I'm not talking about 3 levels. I'm not talking about 5, more than that. Multiple upgrade levels that all use the same upgrading material, which essentially means that you have to farm this material. I'm not sure, I did not record any footage of that to refute my claim or to basically, you know, bolster it up, but I don't think if you just play the game through like normal and you don't repeat any activity twice, you don't farm nights or anything like that, I doubt you make enough raw material to actually upgrade more than 2 items in the game to completion. And that's fucking crazy, because there's tons of this shit. So it really just, it seems like a thing where they literally just sat and said, you know, do we make something that takes people like, you know, 10 hours to get all the items leveled up, 15 hours to get all the items leveled up, 50 hours, and then just said, you know what, go for the maximum amount of time, 10 levels per everything requires the same material, some of these things drop randomly off zombies that you kill, just make it take like super fucking long. And that's essentially what we ended up, and that again drives us towards this 500 hours. So that would definitely be something that I just didn't enjoy. I feel like the game doesn't necessarily respect your time, and I think that the person who spends 500 hours versus the person who spends 50 hours in this game is not necessarily having more fun. You know, the 500 guy is not having more fun than the 50. So that kind of makes you wonder, then, should you be playing 500 hours? So that then brings me to my overall opinion on the game and whether I think it's worth the full price. My overall opinion on the game, this is a funny one, because I think if you're a fan of Dying Light 2, it doesn't matter what anybody says to you, you were gonna buy this game. I was a fan of Dying Light 1, so even though people were warning me and saying there's no way it can live up to the hype, it looks extremely janky, nobody wants to play 500 hours, every single piece of warning or caution that was offered to me by people around me and Twitter and Reddit and whatnot, I said, you know what, that's cool, but I'm gonna buy this game because I'm a fan of the original. I don't regret buying the game, but now having played it, I feel it's an inferior product to the original. And that seems weird to say that because it's basically a copy of the original with more stuff on. But generally speaking, more does not equal better. More does not equal, you know, that having more content in the game doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy it more. And that's really where I think that this game fails. I think that perhaps this model of open world game is starting to become stale, or something that doesn't really engage players as it used to. I think Dying Light 2, the way that this game is right now, if it launched when Dying Light 1 launched, and you know, if Dying Light 1 was not something that existed, then the game would be received like an insane amount more, you know, positively than it is right now. But it isn't. This game is 7 years after the original and takes a lot from the original and improves upon it, but doesn't improve upon it in a way of like actually making it better. It improves on it by just multiplying, you know, the effort, making it more. So before, when you had to upgrade items, then okay, cool, this was the steps that you had to follow. Now when you have to upgrade items, this is the steps that you have to follow. If we look at the way how repairing worked in the original game, where you could literally just, cool, you have 3 options of chances of repairing an item, you have 5 chances of repairing an item, and you spend scrap and you do it, and bomb, you're fucking done. In this game, you have to actually use these add-ons that you put onto the weapons, and they bring back some durability to the game. Of course, there's a charm in the game that you can find that's like a fucking, you know, Easter egg that basically gives every item 500 durability, and you can keep on, you know, applying it. But the point is just that is such a fucking convoluted system for something as simple as repair. The way our repair worked in the first game was fine. You didn't have to change that. That's a weird thing to look at that and go, we have to make this more difficult. We have to make this take longer to be able to do. So in the end, I feel like this game, while it improves on some things from the first game, like of course the creature design and the graphics and the parkour and some of that, even just, you know, the stuff that is there is basically just repetition of what we saw in 1, and it just takes you longer to get to it. Another fantastic example is sliding in the game. It is buried so fucking deep in the, I think it's in the stamina. Yeah, it's not in the combat. So it's buried so deep in the traversal tree that you can actually spend the first 6 to 8 hours wondering like, Jesus, why doesn't this game have sliding anymore? Only to see, oh, I need to literally level a shitload up before I can just slide underneath something while running. So yeah, overall, I think this game is not worth the full price, simply because it launched in a full month where there are, you know, crazy options available to you for your time, but also for the value of your money. And at the same time, I will attach right back to what I said at the beginning, and that is that if you were a fan of the original, you would have already bought this fucking game. So I guess this message is for anybody that's on the fence, that maybe didn't play the original and, you know, kind of don't know if they need to, you know, they got a couple of days left before Horizon comes out. They got a couple of days left before Elden Ring comes out. So should I spend my money on this game? I'd say to you at this moment in time, even if you spend your money on this game now, to get the full value of that full price out of it, it would require more hours from you than you have available before those other games come out. So it's a catch-22. I definitely think this is a game that is awesome to pick up on a sale down the line when there's a little bit of additional DLC. This studio is well known for making free DLC for the games as well, so that's of course a pro. And when there's more of this available and you've got some time that you can pinch off and you can do this, possibly the game has also been patched more by that time, because of course depending on the platform that you play on, there are several bugs in this game. I myself experienced one where essentially my save game kept loading me into a chair and I was stuck in this chair and I couldn't use any skills, I couldn't jump or anything like that. So this was just the thing, and this happened for a whole day until the next day when I started up the game again and I was contemplating starting over from scratch, and I loaded, and I don't know if it was patched during the night, but suddenly that fucking chair wasn't there anymore. So crazy shit. But yeah, like I said, I definitely think the game is something that you should play, but picking it up for a sale price is no problem at all, and maybe something that you should aim for. But let me know in the comments down below how you're enjoying the game. Of course, if you were having tons of fun with the game, I say fucking cool, because that's the most important thing. Are you having fun? This was purely my opinion, and now I'd love to hear yours. But as always, thank you for watching, especially if you made it this far. It is just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.